Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company, with a flavor for every freedom-loving American. Shipped to you within days of being roasted. They put the roast on date right there in every bag to get it to you as fresh as possible. And they have the same faith, family, and freedom values that you do. Go to firstcup.com. Use the code DACE for a discount. Firstcup.com is where you can go. Use the promo code DACE for that discount at firstcup.com. All right, coming up on today's show, given the standards of this era, what I'm about, well, you don't even know what I'm about to say.
Don't.
Given the standards of this era, what I'm about to say should pack a wallop, okay? But in Pop Culture Tuesday later on today, we are going to discuss one of the most gutless acts by a boy who can shave I have seen. Just the level of cowardice here is off of the charts. And it's only cowardice because every other reason why a man says, I can't do that, I can't do the hard thing, I can't take a tough stand, I can't risk this or that, this guy doesn't have to worry about any of that at all. But he literally chose his own self-edification over his own daughter. And I don't say that cavalierly. We'll get into that coming up in Pop Culture Tuesday. Next hour, we're going to debut a new segment. We're not going to do this weekly. It'll be a reoccurring thing between now and the election, which is 11 weeks from today. Well, that's, when most of us are going to vote. Okay. Some of this voting starts, I think, in about 10 minutes in like North Carolina and Virginia. Okay. But we're going to debut a new segment, Legit Poll or Not. And I'm going to pick a few polls from the last week or so that have been released, and I'm going to walk you through just a nice layman's exercise of how to analyze these things, how to look at them, how to read them, do what's within the crosstabs. What even are the crosstabs, by the way? But what's within the crosstabs? Does it line up with the conclusion? Because if all you do is just, and that's what most people do, If all you do is just react to the headlines, then you're going to succumb to the psyop that these things are. So yeah, what is a psyop and what is a poll? And no, let's get this out of the way right now. Just because, or whether or not it says what we like or not, does not determine whether or not it is a legit poll. That's not what we're going to do here. Maybe other people will do that for you. We don't do that here. All right, so we're going to look at polls from every angle, from media outlets on our side, media outlets on their side, and I'm going to walk you through, is this conceivable? Like, if could there be an election in America on any timeline in which we currently exist, where the outcome that this poll is not the top line thing they're reporting on, but the information that's supposedly leads up to it, is this possible? Because if it's not, then it's just not a legitimate poll. And we'll get into that coming up on the next hour of the show. At the bottom of this hour, I've got a new piece out. I'm not letting this go. I told you this a couple of weeks ago. I am not letting it go. Speaking of polls, Trump is performing consistently behind with whites where he was in 2020 when he won them by 17, where he was in 2016 when he won them by 20. He is consistently polling, about 3 to 5 points behind where he has been performing with whites.
You don't say.
You don't say. Why is that? Because I am warning about this, and I am going to keep sounding the shofar and banging this drum until somebody over at Mar-a-Lago gets the message and does something about it, because I don't want to lose. In fact, in the overtime today, for the first time, I'm going to give the audience, if you're a subscriber, I'm going to give you a preview of some of the private conversations I have with people around the country. Pardon me. Some of them, folks you would know about what were to happen if we actually lost this thing. And I'm only going to do this once. once between now and the election. Only one time, Johnny, dangerously. We're doing this one time because it wrecks me to even, frankly, have to consider this a conversation. And I'm only going to do it in the overtime for subscribers because I don't want this out into the Gen Pop. I don't want to demoralize people, but I do think it's something we should consider. So I'm going to consider it once. That's going to be in today's overtime. And then I'm going to get back to, now I'm going to keep telling you what I think is true, like what I'm about to say here in just a minute. But my goal is to not have to face the fear that I'm going to articulate in the overtime later today for BlazeTV subscribers at blazetv.com/days. I'm going to get it out of my system for subscribers behind the paywall. So a little family discussion, if you will. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to get out of my system and that's it. I'm not bringing it up again for the next 11 weeks. Because I'm going to spend my time doing whatever I can to make sure I don't have to face when I'm going to lay out for you in the overtime today. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to keep bringing this up. Because those 3 to 5 points of whites that Trump keeps underperforming with, well, a lot of those are women. Evangelical women in the suburbs. And what's their number one issue, guys? We're all married to suburban Christian women. Todd, not an evangelical one, but you've certainly spent much of your time around such people. What is their number one issue? Their number one issue, what is it? The life issue. That's what their number one issue is. And it's inexcusable to leave them on the sidelines. So we're going to talk to Kristan Hawkins at Students for Life about that coming up at the bottom of the hour. But before we get there, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Democrats having the joy down in their hearts. Democrats at the opening day of their convention struck a moderate, measured, and mature tone. In the aftermath of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump and their own difficult decision to dump Biden, it's clear Democrats recognize the fragility of this moment and dialed back their rhetoric during night one of the Democrat National Convention.
Make no mistake, Donald Trump is a plague on the American conscience.
And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot.
He is a clear and present threat.
In my perfect world, every Republican is out of the country and all the immigrants come in. That's what I want.
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents.
J.D. Vance calls pregnancy resulting from rape inconvenient. Like, inconvenience is traffic. I mean, make him go through this.
J.D. Vance, do you understand why there was a sudden job opening for running mate on the GOP ticket? They tried to kill your predecessor.
The event ran way behind last night, bumping Joe Biden's scheduled speech out of primetime television. He did end up giving a speech at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Women are not without electoral or political power.
Oh, also, Tim Walz has been caught in another lie, this time about IVF.
Yeah, first of all, it was up to him. I wouldn't have a family because of IVF and the things that we need to do reproductive. My kids were born through that that way.
Yeah, according to the New York Times, that's BS. Walz and his wife did not conceive their children via IVF. The text of the Democrat Party platform has been released, and the copy editors over in Kamala Land did not understand the assignment. The words Biden's second term are mentioned no fewer than 19 times. What's even more worrying, though, is a part of that platform is the Democrats and Kamala's commitment to passing the U.S. Citizenship Act, which would give amnesty to human traffickers, give unlimited welfare to illegals, and let previously deported illegals return to the country. Moving on, Texas Children's Hospital has fired Vanessa Sivage, the nurse who exposed alleged Medicaid fraud at the hospital's so-called child sex change program. Texas Children's Hospital denied Sivage's request to transfer, then terminated her employment after she blew the whistle. Sivage posted on X yesterday she has no regrets. Activist and filmmaker Robbie Starbuck has forced yet another company to bend the knee to their actual customer base. Starbuck recently illuminated the woke DEI practices and beliefs chiefs of executives at Harley-Davidson Motorcycles. Harley-Davidson came out with a statement yesterday saying they are dropping their DEI policies, participation in rainbow jihadist kowtowing, and will only sponsor events supporting first responders and veterans. The iconic motorcycle manufacturer follows John Deere and Company and Tractor Supply, which both made similar decisions to scratch their DEI programs earlier this summer. The Disney Plus show Lesbians in Space, also known as Star Wars The Acolyte, has been canceled after just one season. Disney spent $180 million, or $22.5 million per episode, on season 1 of that show. And finally, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker flexed on social media the other day, posting a few pictures of his recent preseason performance and quoting Winston Churchill saying, "You have enemies? Good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life." That's a dude, and that's what happened while we were away.
Correct. I mean, there's a reason why we picked Harrison Butker as our first half of the year, Man of the Year 2024, and the contrast between him and the individual we will talk about in the final segment of this show is beyond stark. Beyond stark. Like, they're different species of person. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. Remember back in the day when you were agile, mobile, and that made you, delightfully so, a little more hostile. But nowadays, you're very docile. And you're thinking, it's just my way. I've gotten older. There's nothing I can do about it. I mean, that could be true. We do get older, and as we get older, we don't get better, at least physically. You know, I mean, our joints slow down. Our muscles don't, act and operate the way that they used to. We're not as bendy as we once were. All right. But it's also very possible that you've given up the ghost a little too soon. And that's where Relief Factor comes into play. It's not a drug. It's a drug-free supplement that was created by physicians who can prescribe drugs. They wanted to come up with something drug-free that would go after the inflammation that is the likely culprit and cause for the reason that you've got your chronic pain in the body, that inflammation in your joints. And that's what Relief Factor sets out to do. No guarantees here, but over the years, over 1 million people have taken the 3-week Quick Start Challenge and seen such good results that 70% of the time they stick around with the product long term. So for just $20, why don't you see, if you don't see a difference in your pain or in 3 weeks or less, what do you got to lose for just $20 at ReliefFactor.com? That's again where you want to go, is to ReliefFactor.com.
Can I ask you a question really quick just to make sure you get to it even shortly? You know how much I hate future election questions. Loathe them. But they just built the 3rd largest statue, a 90-foot tall monkey god statue in Houston, Texas.
Right.
They also are protecting gender-bending hospitals and doctors. I think one of the biggest questions of future elections is how long before Texas goes blue?
How do you think Sam Houston would have responded to the erection of a monkey statue in his vicinity, within his jurisdiction? How do you think Sam Houston would have responded to that?
That's what Texans should be reflecting on today.
How do you think he would have handled that, do you think? That's my answer.
With severe prejudice.
Yeah, extreme prejudice, more than likely. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Who lies about their own children? Who does that?
Well,
I mean, what?
The lie is the point, right?
I mean, hey, let's be self-aware here, right? Donald Trump is not about obfuscating certain pieces of information to craft the political narrative that he wants, right? Okay?
Yes.
On the other hand, where are all of his adult children as we currently speak? They have been public and supportive of their father this entire time, even through family scandals that we know about extemporaneously, third hand through the tabloids and gossip columns. They lived and grew up through all these things. And so imagine what they must think of their father to go through those events where either their dad morally failed or someone else in the relationship morally failed, right? Okay. And yet through all of that, all right, and in a way, but you have to understand that they have also done so in ways that it has been costly to them. They did not grow up in an environment where they were around people like us. They grew up in an environment where they were around people like them. This was their peer group. These were their friends. They were the biggest. Their dad was the biggest celebrity, arguably, on the planet. They got into any avant-garde, any new age, any pop culture function, from hosting Saturday Night Live, you name it, to hosting the biggest prize fights in the world, from sponsoring golf events that are live on ESPN. I mean, they got anywhere within the confines of enlightened society, okay, that now calls them racist and fascists. All their lives until 2015, they were sitting in the orchestral first chair in all of these cultural enclaves, correct?
They were like a royal family.
Correct. Okay. And so in spite of that too, so keep in mind divorces, scandals, all right, because their dad certainly doesn't tiptoe between the raindrops. We all know that, all right? Through all of that, and then through the fact their dad at like 70's like, all right, guys, I'm going to run for president, and I'm going to align with a bunch of people that our old friends think are white trash, and I'm going to be their champion. And the kid stuck through all of that, right? That has to speak somewhere, doesn't it? I don't care how hardened of a Trump skeptic you are. I don't care how much he infuriates you on any given day. On some level, that has to speak to some kind of bond there between him as a father and his children. Is that a fair take?
So I had the same take about Vivek Ramaswamy, who I cannot stand, having seen the way his young children behave in public.
Yes.
It's the same thing with the instinct, getting up and beckoning his supporters to fight after nearly getting his head blown off. Yes. And I'm probably the most annoyed on a personal level, even beyond you, with Donald Trump. But I have to say, at a personal level, I get what you're saying.
You even see it beyond his grandchildren adore him.
Correct. They spoke at the convention. Yeah. They don't have to get involved in any of this. They could just say, hey, they just keep the trust fund going. You know, if you've got some wild oat to sow at 75 grams, that's great. I'll be, down here at the resort, let alone speaking in prime time at the convention.
The 18-year-old girl asked
So they've got any university, anywhere they want to go from here, that the average person with their level of wealth would be welcomed into and be treated as if they do tiptoe between the raindrops, now being literally outing themselves to say, I'll take the scarlet letter, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be something of honor between Donald Trump and his children. I don't know how you could come to any other conclusion other than that, because Pops and Grandpop is actually hurting all their trust funds by doing this. He's hurting all their trust funds, all the legal fees, the fact that they can't do events with ESPN and post prize fights at their casinos anymore. This entire thing's been largely a loss leader to them compared to where they were before he came down the escalator in the spring of 2020. Yes. Or 2016 or 2015. I don't see, that's not even a debatable point. I don't see how that could be debated by anybody. All right? Now I want you to contrast that with Tim Walz lying about his own children. Who does such a thing? Who does this? Who lies about their own kids? Tell me any kind of person of any character at all. You know, let me throw my own self out there. I use my own family background quite frequently to make points in defense of the pro-life argument, right? Mm-hmm. If I embellished at any moment in time the fact that my mom was pregnant at 15, she's still alive, okay? There's been many elections where her and I don't even vote for the same candidate. She'd have spoken up. Said, that's not true. I was married in 21, and I don't know what my son's even talking about. He's a fraud. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Look at my 3 children, right? Zoe's an adult. She can go look at her medical chart. Did we have to emergency deliver her in the middle of the night over the 4th of July weekend because we had a vessel cord break within Amy's womb, and so she was being malnourished? And was the first words the doctor said when Zoe came out, "I can't believe she's alive"? Did that happen or not? She can go find out for herself and come back and say, "Yeah, my old man's just kind of making stuff up here. That's not real." Who does this? Who makes up stuff about their own kids and uses them as props for issues? I'll tell you who does it. The crowd who spends their days on X, and formerly known as Twitter, for years saying, my 7-year-old came to me wondering, why don't we have open borders, Daddy? Those kinds of people. Those kinds of people. And again, you need to understand what is driving these people. You didn't even realize it when you asked me this question. You had no idea what I was going to address in Aaron's montage first. We didn't even game plan it out before the show started. But what was the question you asked me before I got started talking? What did you ask me about?
Oh, just today? About
yeah, just right here, before I even got
Texas?
into it. Yeah, and the monkey god statue, right deep in the heart of Texas, right there, right? Yeah. See, that's what you're dealing with here. Hear me out, and I'm going to bang this drum, and it's going to go well beyond this election. Because even if we manage to win this, based on what happened to him the first time around, Donald Trump's going to have to be reminded of this on a regular basis by somebody. Do you truly understand what we are up against? And Marxism and communism and the labels we're using right now apply, I agree, but they're also not sufficient. Those are the modern terms and manifestations that we understand in our culture today. We use terms in other eras like pagan, for example, or occultic, okay? Those would have been terms that, are predate knowledge and writings of things now known as Marxism, as communism, okay? But there is a reason why the people out there shouting, the Islamo-radicals shouting death to Israel, okay, are joined on the campuses by the dude with blue hair and an augmented boob job, okay, and a deeper voice than any of us have, okay, and 5 o'clock shadow until 5 o'clock tomorrow, holding the Queers for Palestine sign. This is why. It's the same religion, and you need to understand this. It's why there's a monkey god statue in Houston, Texas. This is spiritual warfare, and this is planting a flag. The intent is the mocking of God. That is the intent. And the intent of mocking God is to either A, claim victory over him, or B, provoke him in anger to take his anger out on his creation, which hell hates almost as much as it hates God himself. And therefore, choice C would be, why not both? And you have to understand this. It's an idol, but it is not idol. It is not there as a joke or a troll. Maybe even the people who erected it may think that. But the forces behind such constructions know exactly what it is they are doing. They know exactly what it is they are doing. And they've known about it since ancient times. All the plagues of Egypt were direct judgments against such kinds of manifestations. Egypt had constructed at that point in time the most powerful empire the world had seen. And throughout its empire were all of these kinds of idols, like this monkey god in Houston. And each of these plagues, from the frogs to the Nile to all of them, were specific rebukes, God saying, no, I'm God, you're not. Get thee behind me, Satan. Now, what impulse would lead a people to look at all of that, live through those judgments, and not repent? And not do the math in their head and say, I think I might be on the wrong side here. But instead, have their leader, their Pharaoh, say, on second thought, we're not going to let you go. Get all the chariots and everything, get them all together again. And go after those Jews and go out there and kill them all in the desert, right where they stand. What kind of impulse would do that? What kind of zeal would do that? What kind of denial of self-awareness and the obviousness of reality would compel what we can just read in a dusty tome, a story from 1600 BC, somewhere thereabouts, and think and we can sit there now in the comfort of our central aired homes and think, what a bunch of morons. Why would you? That's the math you came to? The same compulsion that has a guy running for vice president go on camera and lie about his own children, as if that won't be checked, as if no one will find out, as if that, and just do it naturally. The same one, because they're from the same source. His father is the father of lies, as was Pharaoh's in Exodus. If we do not understand what it is we are truly up against, we have no chance. Clever memes and those kinds of things, I think they can actually be useful tools in quick draw dissembling and mocking, because what the devil hates the most is to be mocked, dissembling and mocking the opponent, provided we understand whom the opponent actually is and what's actually driving this. It means to rule you. It means to rule you. And that statue of that monkey is sitting down there in Houston, deep in the heart of Texas, for the same reason Minnesota nice guy is up on camera yesterday lying about how he conceived his own children. For the same reason. To rule you. To have people wake up today in Houston and realize we lost and be demoralized. Or worse, not even care and just pull into Joel Osteen's church in Houston there like they would every other day just to, be uplifted and hope-filled. If Tim Walz is willing to lie about his own children to rule over you, listen to me when I tell you this. If he is willing to lie about his own children to rule over you, there is nothing, and I mean it, nothing he would not be willing to do to rule over you. Nothing. Nothing. J.R. Ewing is perhaps the greatest scoundrel villain ever created in the history of American television. But there was one person that he was always straight up with. There was one person that he always put ahead of himself. There was one person that actually caused him at times throughout the seasons to even momentarily consider redemption. You guys remember who it was? John Ross Jr. When even your own children become props. My children can be a talking point as a means to an end. My children are nothing more than a means to an end. By the way, that's the same impulse that has you sacrifice your children to the spirit of the age before they're born. They're a means to an end for me. They're a means to an end. And whether you're sacrificing those children to Molech in the valley of Topheth, whether you're doing so on a surgical table at Planned Parenthood, whether you're doing so within the comfy confines of your apartment bedroom over telehealth, or whether you're doing so in downtown Houston to a monkey god, or whether you're doing so on a Zoom call being televised and turning them into props for your campaign, understand the entity that you're truly sacrificing them to is the same. So choose ye this day whom you will serve. There is no middle option. We will not clever and winsome our way out of this. We are dealing with true religious zeal. Tim Walz is willing to use his children more than most of us are willing to love them and sacrifice for them. And that's a fact, Jack. And that's why his side is winning. We took the love of our children out of our platform, gutlessly. We took it out. Meanwhile, they're putting in their platform, America is stolen land and the replacement theory, right there in their platform. The level of bravery and boldness here could not be more stark. I just want to be left alone loses in every history book ever. Don't rock the boat loses in every history book ever. I'm fearful of the backlash loses in every history book ever. Well, we just can't stand for what we believe in because we just got to win right now. Loses in every history book ever. No great tales, fiction or non, have ever been told about such creeds. Can you guys think of one? Think of any great inspiring story or moment in history that was predicated upon any of the statements I just made. Can you come up with one? No. All the most tragic stories and the saddest moments in human history begin with such declarations. And that will be the case for us here. We will not be immune to this. And if you don't agree with me, and if you think I'm overreacting, and if you think I'm doomsaying, I've got a monkey god statue in downtown Houston, Texas to sell ya. So as students begin heading back to school, I want to tell you about a great learning opportunity from our friends over at Hillsdale. They want to make it easy for you to learn even more about the great stuff that they teach and provide. They're on the cutting edge and on the front lines of trying to preserve what's left of American liberty there at Hillsdale. And that's why they want you to know about the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. So many excellent podcasts that you can listen to while taking a walk or driving to work after you listen to this one, of course. But the content and quality of Hillsdale's podcast, including the Larry Arnn Show, the radio-free Hillsdale Hour, the online courses podcast. So that's pretty cool too. All of these are top-notch. You can find them on all major podcast platforms. They've got more than 2 million downloads worldwide. It's the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, one of the many ways our friends at Hillsdale are defending liberty on the battlefield of education. Find your new favorite podcast today, or at least your new second favorite podcast today, at the Hillsdale College Podcast Network at daceforhillsdale.com. Again, DEACE, DACE for, that's the word, the preposition, not the number, daceforhillsdale.com. Again, daceforhillsdale.com. Well, I continue to be befuddled how after what should have been the greatest and was at the time the greatest win the pro-life movement has had in its history, we have lost seemingly all momentum. And now we've talked about the Democrats' Kill 'Em All amendment in Florida. There's now another one of these in Missouri. And Missouri, by the way, has the highest Gen Pop church attendance in a non-LDS state in the union, is in Missouri. Utah is actually number one, but Missouri is next. And I mean, if they can win these kinds of things, just kill them all, no restrictions, nothing, anytime you want, just literally open child sacrifice. If the cuticle of the pinky toe is dangling out of the birth canal, have your way. If they can win that in Florida, which is the most based right-wing state in the union, thanks to Governor DeSantis, if they can do that in Missouri, which has the highest non-LDS church attendance within the general population of any state currently in the union, if they can do it there, they can probably therefore do it anywhere. And on top of that, I continue to be mystified that we are leaving, I believe, or risking leaving anyway, as of right now, August 20th, several points of evangelical suburban women who are very pro-life, and that's their number one issue, leaving them on the sidelines in this election, where failure is something I don't even want to contemplate, because we have chosen on our side to weaken and water down our messaging accordingly. So are these fears of mine irrational? All right. I love, by the way, when I get accused of clickbaiting for not giving you kiss ass analysis. Oh, you're just clickbaiting. Yes. Nothing clickbaits like telling people what they don't want to hear. Anybody else? All right. Nothing works better than nothing engagement farms quite like. Let me tell you exactly what you fear, and is probably going to happen if we don't change what we're doing right now. That engagement farms is totally on its own. All right. Anyway, let's bring in Kristan Hawkins from Students for Life on this. Kristan, it's good to have you on our show for the first time. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Steve.
So let's just start there at the top, all right? And am I just...
You gave me a lovely intro.
Am I weak? Am I panicking? Am I helping the Democrats win? Okay, with the concerns that I just articulated just a couple minutes ago.
No, you're not helping the Democrats win. I think you're offering sage advice to Republicans across the country who I think for the most part have been listening to some of those inside the Beltway consultants who, years before Roe was reversed, were telling Republicans and conservatives to stay away from the abortion issue. And as soon as Roe was reversed, those voices came right back out to the forefront. And so we have been struggling. It has been an uphill battle getting before the Republican leadership, before candidates running in states to say, listen, if you follow the ostrich approach on this issue, putting your head in the sand, you will lose, because Planned Parenthood, the abortion lobby is the biggest bully I know, and you cannot run from a bully.
Kristan, help me understand, and our audience understands, because I have been blessed to have a lot of experience in the political process, I still don't understand how any Republican running for office, from dog catcher to president of the United States, does not know that one of the largest bundlers of the Democratic Party is Planned Parenthood and its associated subsidiaries and allies, okay? And that therefore, just by the virtue, I mean, we've got a congresswoman in my home state of Iowa, Marionette Miller Meeks. I've known Marionette for 20 years. She's been awful on our issue, on the life issue, the whole 20 years I've known her. She's been terrible. She was terrible running for legislature. She was terrible running for Congress multiple times. She's terrible now, all right? She is getting absolutely annihilated in her district by the pro-aborts, whom she has betrayed people like me for her entire political career. She's going to face this. They're not going to, no one over there said, you know what, we were going to run $300 million of ads against Trump, but then he took the platform out, or took the plank out of his platform. So now we're only going to run $175 million. Nobody does this. How do they not recognize that you're just taking on the maximum liability without any of the benefit on the other side? How can they not see this?
I don't know. I mean, it's so clear. I was on campuses in the spring and I was asking students, and it was right after President Trump came out and said, I now believe abortion is a state issue, which, by the way, the DNC platform, everything the Democrats say clearly proves abortion isn't a state issue, because if Kamala wins in November, the promise is a federal abortion up until the moment of birth, taxpayer funded. If you're a Christian and you don't want to commit abortions, you must get out health care law. Like, that's what their standard end goal is, and they're very clear. But when President Trump came out in April and said, I no longer believe it's federal, it's just a state issue, I started asking kids on campuses, pro-choice students at my events, Donald Trump kind of agrees with you on this statement now. Do you think you might reconsider your position of voting against Donald Trump? Does this make you more likely to vote for Trump? And every single time the answer was, hell no. I still hate him because, and then they would list whatever reason. And so it doesn't win any voters. It's actually pretty mystifying why you see politicians try to fall away from the abortion issue when you're exactly right, Steve. Planned Parenthood knows at the end of the day, if you don't have a D beside your name, that at some point or the other, whether it's a judicial confirmation or nomination, a random vote on a funding bill, that could defund Planned Parenthood, that you're not going to be with them. And so they're very clear. You have to have a D beside your name if you want our support. Even if you're a Nancy Mace type of Republican who looks to betray the pro-life movement at every single term she has, or Congresswoman Meeks, they don't care. Because at the end of the day, they want a Democrat in your seat. And it doesn't make sense. And sadly, I think it's going to take some people losing races that should have been safe races to understand this. And at the same time, it hurts us with this generation of young people that we're bringing into the movement who can't find leaders that they want to follow on this issue, because when they obviously know the Democrats are sold out abortion extremists, but they want to be able to be excited for who they're voting for, who they're knocking on doors for, and they're not finding it in the Republican Party. I mean, you have to think about this generation. I remember the 90s and the early 2000s when the pro-life movement would be betrayed by Republicans. And folks who've been in the pro-life movement longer than me remember that. This generation of young people that I have the honor to serve and to educate, 1,500 campuses, groups across the country, they came to political awareness, I guess you could say, after Donald Trump became president. So they only remember a strong Republican Party on life. Mm-hmm. And so they're taking this so personally when they see these Republicans who they thought were on our side starting to betray them. And they're not going to forget this. I mean, this is a decade-long mistake that the Republican consultants and those in leadership are making here, because these are the kids, these are the young people we need to be bringing into the Republican movement, into the broader conservative movement.
Boy, I see what you're talking about in my inbox every day, Kristan. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. Okay, so between Gen Xers and the millennial crowd, Okay, so people that are like, well, I just voted for this guy again in 2020 because he was the best pro-life president we ever had, and now he wants to run from my issue. And so there's this circular argument where we're both right, where they're like, I'm not voting for the guy because of what he's saying about abortion, and I'm like, well, didn't he have the best actual record on the issue of any Republican we've ever had? Right. Yes. And then they come back at me and they say, so then why is he running for his record now and saying the stuff he is saying now? Do you agree with that? No. And we just go back and forth, okay? Because there's evidence that he had the best record, and there's evidence that he's running away from his actual record, and no one makes it. Neither one of the sides in this circular argument in my inbox I have with portions of my audience every day, no one makes any ground because there's ample evidence to support each of their perspectives, and it's one person and one entity has the power to alter that circular argument and make it decisive, right. And it's the Trump campaign in and of itself.
Yep. That's right. And that's been almost the weekly text we've been sending to the leaders of the Trump campaign of President Trump has got to come out and condemn Amendment 4 in Florida, join Governor DeSantis and saying, vote no, Florida, on Amendment 4, the abortion in all 9 months amendment. His voice would be huge, not only in Florida, but across the country. I mean, this is one of the, concerns I had about the Ohio ballot referendum vote. And then if you all remember, there was like 2 days after RNC primary debate, none of the candidates on the stage went to Ohio to campaign and to get people out and to spread the word what was happening. And to be honest, we were completely, underfunded in that, and we were completely underfunded in all of these other state ballot referendums. It's very bleak when you look at the money and the numbers there. But having President Trump's voice, President Trump, we've given him a pro-life gen promise of saying, look, we need a new promise. In 2016, he gave the pro-life movement a very clear promise. If I'm elected, I will appoint strict constitutionalists to the Supreme Court and to the federal bench. And he is a deal maker and he is a promise keeper, and he did both. We need that new deal for the pro-life movement, for the pro-life generation in 2024. And there's things that he can promise, that are fairly simple. For example, stop funding your opponents. Pledge to finally debar and defund Planned Parenthood. This would help out every Republican, even pro-choice Republicans like Congresswoman Meeks. That would help them. They need to be defunded. They get $700 million from us every single year. They're one of the largest funders of the Democratic Party. Why are we giving them our taxpayer dollars? Why do Republicans keep voting to give them more money and to give them more power? That is something, even if you believe that abortion is merely a state's issue, which it's not, because if you look at the Democrats and how tragically yet brilliantly the Biden administration has demonstrated all the ways abortion is federal in the past couple of years, even if you mistakenly believe abortion is simply federal, you should be able to come on board with that promise.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, you mentioned Amendment 4. I got about 3 minutes. And what's going on there in Florida, there's a similar amendment now on the ballot in Missouri. And, Missouri has has the highest Gen Pop non-LDS church-going population in America. And so with what has happened under DeSantis in Florida and the strong religious community in Missouri, if they can win here, and in a presidential election environment where the turnout's going to be much larger than the Ohio off-year referendum, okay? If they can win those two, then they're going to be emboldened and they're going to think that they are capable of winning absolutely anywhere. How much of this, let's be self-aware as a movement. Somewhere we have lost our momentum after Roe v. Wade. We either weren't strategically prepared. I don't know the answers, but we're kind of giving Republicans cover for running from us, okay? Because they can keep pointing out, hey, Ohio is more Republican than it's ever been, and you guys lost there. We need a dub, all right, to get our credibility back. What can we do better in order to get more of the attention of the soft, nominal Republican?
Well, I think we need to get Republicans to come out and say, vote no. I mean, even in Ohio, we had students out the weekend before the election in their communities hosting events, and people are like, wait, what's this vote about? which side's the pro-life side? We saw it in Kansas, where I personally door knocked. People were asking me, wait, which one's the pro-life side? I'm not sure. And so if you have the mouthpiece of the Republican leadership in the state, it would go a long way. I mean, Florida, we have the best chance of prevailing because you need 60% of the vote. If President Trump would join Governor DeSantis and say, Florida, vote no, this is abortion extremism. Do not fall for the lies of the Democrats who want you to believe this is just like some first trimester thing. It's definitely not. That would go a big way. So we, the grassroots, must demand that our leaders speak up now on this. We also have to get active. You can go to abortionballot.org. We made these like simple PDFs that you can download, print, put your own organization name on it. I don't care what you do with it. It has the actual amendment language and then redlined out what it actually means. Spread that far and wide. Like make 500 copies and walk to every neighbor you can get to. Take it to your church. Take it to your parish, because we don't have, you want to dissect what's going on in the pro-life movement challenges we have. One of the biggest challenges we have is in these states, we do not have very well-funded pro-life statewide organizations. And so when these state ballot referendums come, you have national groups like Students for Life Action that's coming in. We're doing our part, door knocking and doing billboards and digital ads. You have other groups doing their part, but there's not one cohesive strategy because it lacks that organizational ability. And I think that, that's a long-term problem we have. That's something that we're seeking to fix at Students for Life America, training up all of these young people. But that's a massive problem. You also have, we focus a lot of our time in the pro-life movement on politics and policy, which obviously saves lives, but you have to bring culture along with it. And what we saw was a massive campaign as soon as Roe fell, this disinformation campaign that we saw firsthand on college and high school campuses with young women being told that they're going to have to be forced to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, that they're going to die from ectopic pregnancies, which is completely false. Even the rhetoric we saw yesterday at the DNC talking about how we need these amendments because women are going to die, which every single piece of pro-life legislation of law in the country explicitly states if a woman is going to die, a maternal fetal separation must be done, which is a C-section, which doesn't kill the child and will preserve the mother's life. The child may or may not survive, but we will treat that child with dignity and value, but at the same time, ensure we preserve the mom's life. I mean, these are just complete lies that we're hearing, and we need to be educated to then go out to our communities and say, wait a minute, this isn't right. And that means being a keyboard warrior on social media, do it. That means printing out one of our flyers at Abortion Ballot, putting your own name on it. I don't care. Like I said, put your own organization name, take credit on it. I don't care. Get this information out because we're not at a place in all of these states right now to say we have the money, we have the reach that we need.
Outstanding. Give that website one more time so everybody gets it.
Abortionballot.org.
Abortionballot.org is where you want to go. Some great resource materials there. Abortionballot.org. Kristan, great stuff. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we'll do it again for sure. Take care.
Thanks, Steve, for having me.
You bet. All right, we'll come back. Hour 2. I want to get you guys' reaction to that. Okay? And we're going to debut a new reoccurring segment between now and 11 weeks from now. Legit poll or not. We'll have that conversation here in a moment. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on BlazeTV radio podcast. Hello to our audience over on X as well. I forgot to do this for like 2 weeks. Say hi to them. And urge you, if you're on Twitter, following us there, or X, at Steve Deace Show, to make sure you get a chance to watch us there each day. Also, make sure you subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. At Deace Show on YouTube. The old one is still up for now, as we are making that transition, but we're trying to start a brand new YouTube channel.
Yeah, we should maybe talk about how we transition, because I've just been uploading the show to both.
Yeah.
We need an exit ramp.
I don't know that we know. I mean, we have been cited so many times. I just saw Naomi Wolf apparently has been off Twitter, kicked off for 3 days, and just got her account back.
Off of Twitter? Well, she's been kicked off multiple things in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Has she? Okay, yeah. She just got kicked off of. What'd she do? How'd she?
I don't know.
This whole thing, man, it's just exceedingly difficult. And so to navigate all of this various censorship. So we're doing our best, and we're trying to start a new YouTube channel at Deace Show there. If you could go there and subscribe to that at Deace Show on YouTube, would really appreciate it. Please share that as well at Deace Show on YouTube. All right, so you can also let us know what you think about what we think at steve@stevedeace.com. You can also follow us and find us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Just look for Steve Deace there. Follow us as well at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you are a podcast aficionado, thank you. Please, if you have not done this before, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice because you like the show. Also hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow, and that'll ensure that every single time we do a new episode, it'll be right there in your feed every single time. I want to thank our friends over at Miracle Made. They are responsible for this portion of the show. And now that we're heading into that late summer, early fall time of year, I mean, it's like going to be a high of 75 today here in Des Moines, and then like a high of 95 on Saturday, right? And it's those kinds of things where you're like running the AC during the afternoon, but then at night you want the windows open because it's cooling down. And as we're transitioning here into that change of season, temperature regulating, particularly when it comes to sleep, can be a challenge. And I can promise you, your Miracle Made sheets, they are up to that challenge with silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA that help with temperature regulating all night long. They're also very comfy. Let's not undersell that. They're very comfy. I love these sheets, and they're just phenomenal. And I've been raving about them for going on 2 years now. If you have yet to do so, go to trymiracle.com/Deace and try Miracle Made sheets today, whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one. If you order them today, you can save over 40% off. And if you use promo Deace at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20% off as well. And Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep now with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Deace and use the code Deace to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, trymiracle.com/Deace. Use the promo code Deace at trymiracle.com/Deace. Before we get to a new segment that we're going to debut here today that'll be reoccurring between now and 11 weeks from now, when is the actual election day. Let's get some reaction. I thought Kristan Hawkins was pretty much straight fire here from Students for Life a few minutes ago on the show. And again, the website that she wants to direct you to, if you're looking for resources on these amendments around the country, like the new one in Missouri, like Amendment 4 in Florida, it's abortionballot.org, I believe she said, right?
Yes.
Abortionballot.org, abortionballot.org. And she said, hey, these materials, they're PDFs, customize them for your local pro-life group, your church, whatever you want to do, put your own name on it. They're totally fine with that. They just want to stop this, all right? So abortionballot.org. And can I say this too? The amount of people in pro-life leadership that'll say things like what she just said, just take our stuff and put your own organization on it. We don't care. We're just trying to win. I just have to tell you, I've not heard that kind of stuff a lot in my career. I just haven't. Okay? So props to her for that. Abortionballot.org. Again, abortionballot.org. Gentlemen, what did you think of that conversation?
Well, she does that because abortion is, or the life issue is one of the right's most principled, closed-hand positions. But I really think it's interesting that you and her found common purpose in discussing Marriott Milley Meeks, because alongside the principle...
Real quick, for people to know, there was a congresswoman a couple of years ago. They literally tried to steal her seat from her. She won by 15 votes or something, right? That's who it was. And a bunch of you emailed me and said, why aren't you going to bat for her? Because I know her. Because she sucks. I mean, I don't want him to steal the seat, but I just understand
this is
much of how she's going to vote for the next 2 years, it will seem as if they did, okay? And now she is a cautionary tale where she has railed against me in Iowa politics and people like me my entire career. And now she finally, after how many times did this woman run? Like 4 times, finally got elected. And now she's getting absolutely annihilated in her district by the same people I tried to warn her about years ago, but she thought I was the problem instead. But anyway, your thoughts.
Well, this is so important because along with the principled argument, there's just it's the economy stupid argument that you are both saying, yes, you can't. It's just the vote. It's just the math of the matter. And no matter what she thinks principally about abortion, she can't run away with it. It's just 1 + 1 = 2 in terms of our modern electorate. And I think that's really, really important to point out because, like with the economy stupid, this particular election, broadly speaking, if that was still true, should it be run away for Trump? But it also isn't. So in both fronts, we have to start thinking people on the right. We tell ourselves certain things, but increasingly, we don't really mean it. We are lying either consciously or unconsciously to ourselves about what our real agenda is on the voter side of things, on the candidate side of things, and that is all too often why we lose.
It's just malpractice, and that's putting it very charitably. It's just malpractice. There are, I have to believe, still on the right, a ton of people out there, some of which you just discussed, who are like me 2 months ago. Give me a reason to vote for you. Please, an affirmative reason to vote for you. Because there's a lot of people who are just sick and tired of just voting against the Democrats, despite the fact that we've seen everything that they are and are promising to be if they are continued to be given power. But there are still people that give me a reason to vote for you. And it is absolute malpractice, putting it charitably, to leave your core base on the sidelines in this election. Because as we've seen really over the past several, if you're voting, I just want to repeat this again. If you're voting on the issue of baby killing, there's basically no middle ground there. You're not going to, people who go to the ballot box to vote either for or against baby killing, they're either going to be in one of two camps. There's no moderating your position on the issue of baby killing. That's going to cause people to reassess you. And so the issue then becomes making sure your own base, who are already positioned and postured to vote for you, giving them a reason to do so. That's the name of the game.
Correct.
And to continue to just allow these people to sit on the sidelines if they were going to vote at all, or if they're even receptive to you at all, that's absolute malpractice.
Correct. We can't reiterate this enough. Again, as Aaron just said, if it weren't true, I would tell you, okay? Like, I'm going to tell you right now, running on, we're going to ban gay marriage everywhere, ain't a winner. Now, I would morally support that.
Yes.
But that ain't a winner right now. Okay? I will tell you what you don't want to hear. I will tell you what I don't want to hear. Okay? All right? Because I would like to live in a universe where what I just said was not true, except I know that it is. Okay? So I will tell you, this is dumb. This gambit is dumb. Not opposing Amendment 4 in Florida is the equivalent of Romney not eating the chicken sandwich in this election. You are the guy that overturned Roe. They are trying in your own state to just say they can kill a kid whenever they want, however they want, with whoever they want. And it doesn't even have to be physician assisted. And you can't say no to that. That is malfeasance on the part of the Trump campaign. I don't know how else to put it to you. That's an easy dub. And up until that moment, I thought it was possible that Trump was even more popular than the pro-life issue was with our own pro-life people. But I will tell you, the amount of pushback from pro-lifers in my audience I have received to voting for Trump after what he said about Amendment 4 went a lot further than just a small but very dedicated group of DeSantis people that are upset that we passed on maybe the best candidate we've ever had. I mean, it went to a different level in my audience. It went to a different, and it has stayed there. I cannot think of a day I have not received something negative in my inbox multiple times in the last 2 weeks. I'm not voting for this. I can't believe this. I'm out. That's his job. That's the campaign's job. That's their job. And most of you are going to yell right now on your screens if you're watching, or your devices if you're listening. You're like, well, what about his record? I'm the one making the case that you are making. He's running from his record, though. All right? And we're not having the 2016 and 2020 election. We're having the 2024 election. And Donald Trump is running from this issue. Running from it. And there's nothing to gain. There is no gain here. There is no independent voter that was like, well, I was going to vote for Trump, but now he's not for abortion at any particular point in time, so now I'm not. That is an 80% issue for 40 years. It's an 80% issue. Why, guys, if I'm wrong, then how come Democrats always deny they're for abortion up till birth? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Why do they deny it then? Why do they always deny it when they're asked? Why do they always try to deflect and say that, or just even flat out lie and gaslight and say that, well, that's not true? And act like the governor of Virginia and the former governor of New York aren't on record saying such things. Why? Because I'm telling you the truth. He's blowing this. He is receiving all of the backlash and getting none of and not the maximum amount of benefit. There's no middle here.
Forget principle. He's not even doing art of the deal.
Correct. The math is just bad. There's not one. Go ask Marionette Miller Meeks if there's been a decline in her congressional district of abortion ads since Trump said, I've got no opinion on Amendment 4. Go ask her. Go ask Marionette Miller Meeks. You know, did they cancel all those ads on the local CBS affiliate? Because well, son of a gun, Trump's with us on that, I guess, or at least not against us, so we're good here. No! It just doesn't even sound stupid to say it out loud. This is dumb. And it could cost us this entire thing. There are things in this election, this is what I wrote about for the Blaze today. We can't control their ballot harvesting. We cannot control it. We just can't. We cannot control psyops of media coverage. We can't control that. We can't control some of the joke polling I'm about to show you here in a minute. We can't control that. You do not win by kvetching over the things you cannot control. You win in any situation in life. Men, she knows you're going bald. Stop the comb over, okay? And wear sleeveless shirts where you show off the guns and the work you're doing in the gym. You see what I'm trying to say? We think you win by covering your weaknesses. No, you don't. No, you don't. You win by accentuating your strengths. You do not win by kvetching over the things you cannot control. You win by mastering the things that you can. We can control this. This doesn't have to go like this. This campaign is aiding and abetting this. Ask these guys, ask any of my friends, ask anybody. What even happens to my disposition when I'm asked, well, do you think we're going to lose, or what happens if we lose, or I think we're going to lose? What's my body language even like when that even is proposed to me, public or off the air?
Fun.
Yeah, I sit up straight. We're humming Roll Out the Barrel like we're at Milwaukee County Stadium watching Gorman Thomas hit home runs in 82.
Oh, that's a nice pull.
I thought you'd like that. I did that for you.
You even got the year right.
And then because I also couldn't remember Robin Yount's name till just now. So somehow Gorman Thomas came to mind.
That's interesting, but I
couldn't remember the Hall of Famer's name, but I remembered Gorman Thomas.
Stormin' Norman.
There you go. No, guys, I'm sick to my freaking stomach thinking about it. All right? This is avoidable. And it's the kind of thing, by the way, when you're trying to push back on their, we barely beat them again in a really razor close election again, guys, narrative on November 6th. It's the kind of thing they're going to look at and say, well, you only got, evangelical turnout was 23%. It was 26% before. You didn't turn out your own base. You only won white women. You only won whites by 13 points. You didn't win them by 20 points like before. See what I'm saying? You can't play into their narrative. You can't do that. You can't. Styles make fights. If this is about ground game, we're going to lose. Okay? I promise you, we're going to lose. If this is about better messaging, if this is about drawing sharp contrast for the country, if this is about making and running smart, disciplined campaigns to make sure we're maximizing our own base turnout, I think we're going to win. I do. Which brings me to this new segment. Legit poll or not. Brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. If you are frustrated and tired of doing business with people that you know hate you, unfortunately, you don't have an option and an alternative in every single industry. But one place where you do is when it comes to your mobile phone. Make the switch today to our friends at Patriot Mobile. I've seen it with my own eyes, man. I mean, everywhere I go, whether I'm doing an event in Iowa or doing an event in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, chances are Patriot Mobile has written a check to underwrite the cost for that. They absolutely reinvest back in to the saving of America, back into the kingdom. They take the profits that you give them. They're prophetic with those. And they have a great service. Our family loves it. Their customer service team's been incredible. If you want to make the switch today, go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. And right now, get a free month when you use the offer code Steve. So get a free month with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, my goal, and we'll do this on a reoccurring basis. We won't do it next week because it'll be after the Democratic convention. There's no point critically analyzing polls after that sugar high. All right. So it'll be at least a couple of weeks before we do this again. But every so often between now and Election Day, 11 days from today, I'm going to walk you through how to look at these polls with discernment, how to deconstruct them to see if the math adds up. All right. If the assumptions that they're claiming in their top line results that make the headlines are confirmed by their math. Right. If I tell you that the final sum is 5, but then when you looked at my math, the formula that I got to get to 5 was 2 + 2, you would know something is wrong, right? That's either a typo, it's a misprint, the top line is wrong, or the formula is wrong, because we all know that 2 + 2 is not 5, but 4, right? So that's kind of what I want to do with the polls that we're going to look at here this episode to start us off. All right, so let's start here. All right, I want to start with a Fox News poll. We're going to look at polls on every side. And again, we're not going to determine that a poll is justified or valid and legit on whether or not it tells us what we want to hear, but whether or not its own methodologies are legit regardless of what it tells us. All right. So in this poll, and this was trumpeted everywhere on our side just a few days ago because it's Fox, they're the biggest platform on our side, and it was the first poll that came out from a corporate media outlet that showed Trump ahead during this entire Yas Queen PR offensive that we're getting from the Democrats and their media. But I repeat myself. So it has Trump at +1 in the popular vote. Sounds great, right? Okay. Here's the problem, though. The Fox News poll here has Donald Trump winning Hispanics, not gaining with Hispanics, winning them. The best any Republican's ever done. George W. Bush got 40% in the year 2000. That's the best any Republican's done since we began exit polling Hispanic results around 1980. So it's got Trump winning Hispanics overall and winning independents comfortably. Independents will be anywhere from 25 to 40% of the vote. Very tough to pin down what that turnout's going to be in any given election. Okay. And over the last 40 years, I've seen elections where independents were anywhere from 25 to 40% of the vote. And it's not easy sometimes to determine how many of them will actually vote. It's really not. So this is a garbage poll. Because I'm telling you right now, if Donald Trump wins independents comfortably, and wins Hispanics, who are going to be somewhere between 10 and 12% of the electorate probably. So if he wins Hispanics and wins independents comfortably, guys, he's winning 30 states. So my point here is these things aren't congruent.
And devil's advocate, based on everything you've said on the show for years about this kind of stuff, you're saying that is regardless of the size of the pie?
Yes.
Because the argument be, what if he does this, but the turnout's really, really,
right,
really
so
low?
what if he wins independents comfortably, but they're 25% of the electorate, right? For example, you would compensate for that by winning Hispanics overall, right? So if like independents are 25% rather than 30%, but you're winning Hispanics overall, you've kind of compensated for that, okay? And not to mention, we have shown you the hard data that Republicans have gained on Democrats all year long and voter registrations all over the country, right? Okay, so that just that cannot happen. That math cannot occur. Could Trump win Hispanics? I mean, I think there's a 15% chance, but, previous elections, I might have said it was 10 or less, all right? Could he win independents? Damn well better. Or we're 4F'd. All right, pick an orifice. We're effed in every one, okay? So, but the idea that he's going to win them comfortably by like 7 or 8 points like he did in 2016, and then he's going to overperform George W. Bush's all-time GOP record, because to win it, you figure, now RFK is talking about dropping out. Let's say you need 48 to win it, and a mixture of other candidates get 1 to 2%. Okay, you're telling me he would overperform George W. Bush by 8 points with that group, and then perform with independents at the rate he did in 2016, and he's going to win by 1 point? No, he's not. He's going to win the popular vote by 3 or 4 points, and he's going to win like 30 states. That can't happen. Next poll. Let's look at this one. Quinnipiac. And I wanted to single them out from the jump for all of you because they're one of the most media-sided pollsters there are, and they're garbage. They're complete and total garbage. They're the worst. They're terrible. Which, Steve, some of you are about to email me right now, is exactly why they're cited so often by the media. Let me save you the email and acknowledge up front you're all right about that, but they're bad. Maybe some of you are going to remember the most infamous Quinnipiac poll of all time. Its final projection in the 2018 Florida governor's race is DeSantis was going to lose by 7 points. And he won. That's just a bit outside. Okay? But that's not the first time they made that mistake. In 2020, Quinnipiac had Biden winning Pennsylvania by 7 points. And he won it by just 1 with all the turnout. Or ballot harvesting, or whatever it is the hell you want to call that. And again, this is a state, lots of money being spent, gets polled all the time. Do you know how bad at this you have to be this far off? Pretty bad. And Quinnipiac is pretty bad all of the time. If you want to be discerning and knowledgeable about this, I would not take anything Quinnipiac says ever. I could probably just do a legit polls or not on ABC News, Washington Post polling, and Quinnipiac polling every single time. They're and CNN polling. They're just dreadful, awful. Blindfold yourself and throw darts at a wall. You'll be more accurate. Bad. Let's go next to here. Any questions on that one before I move on, Todd?
No.
All right. This is one from Rasmussen. Now, Rasmussen has actually been one of the most accurate pollsters the last 2 presidential cycles, but it's because they're biased. Very important for me to point this out to you. Rasmussen is biased polling. Some of you that are new to this are going to follow like Scott Rasmussen. He founded this organization. It's not his company anymore. He sold it several years ago. He now has his own polling firm called RMG Research, and following Scott's work for many years, my guess is it's going to be pretty good, but I don't have a track record yet to use with them, so I don't know. All right. But his old company is a flat out push poll for the Trump campaign. Well, Steve, you just said it's also one of the most accurate pollsters of the last 2 presidential elections. Yep. Because their bias, their built-in Trump methodology bias, actually works to counter. They're not as biased towards Trump, even though they are, but they're not as biased towards Trump as everybody else is against him. So it's a good balance. Now, I wouldn't rely exclusively on Rasmussen for reasons I'm about to show you. All right, so if you look at their battleground state polling, for example, they have Trump winning Arizona, they have Trump winning Pennsylvania, and they have Harris only up by 1 in Michigan. Here's the problem with this. Is Rasmussen put out a national poll like the day before this battleground state polling, and it showed that Trump was up in the popular vote by 4 points. Folks, you need to understand that a Republican hasn't won the popular vote by that much or more since 1988, an era where George H.W. Bush could win California, and he did. Again, there is no planet within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, no geographic area within the 9 known realms. There is no dimension that we could portal to where Donald Trump will win the popular vote by 4 points. So by the greatest margin in 36 years, and then not get a 30-state blowout. No, it can't happen. Well, Steve, couldn't he just rack up like huge margins in like Alabama, Mississippi? Sure, but the population base isn't. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. The density of population isn't there for that. Trump would have to get like 75% of the popular vote in Mississippi and Alabama and Tennessee and Georgia. Well, Georgia's a battleground now, but Arkansas and because the population density isn't there. Just getting 55-60% of the popular vote in those states would not provide him enough votes. Like Hillary Clinton, I think she actually, if I remember this right, guys, correct me if I'm this, I might have to look it up during the break, but I think if you took California off the board in 2016, she would have actually lost the popular vote or come close to losing it. Because you have a population density there where margins could be racked up for one side to skew what the numbers are nationwide. Right? Those kinds of demographics don't exist in the red states where, there's no percentage of vote Trump can get in West Virginia, for example, that's going to balance out the amount of vote against him in New York City. All right. Any questions on this so far?
No, that's good.
Right. So this is incongruent as well. This doesn't work. So then, Steve, is there a congruent poll? Yeah. This is one. Now, doesn't mean I necessarily agree with all of its findings, but it's crosstabs, which are itemized here. What are the crosstabs? The individual pieces of information that break down demographically that tell you how they came to the conclusions they did. Okay? And so here's Pew's latest national poll that has Harris up 46-45. Now, I think RFK Jr. at 7% is. I wouldn't agree with that at all. I don't think he's getting anything close to that. And the way his VP's talking today, I'm not even sure he's even going to be in the race on Election Day. All right? But this is a realistic scenario. All right. I would say Harris only getting 77% of the black vote is probably off by about 10 points. Okay. I would say Trump winning whites by 11 is also too low to balance that out. I would say even if Trump underperforms poorly with whites, he'll still win them by 14 or 15. He just needs to win them by 18 to 25. Okay. But this adds up. This makes sense. This could be, we could sit here on Election Day and see something that looks similar to this. We would just quibble, I should say, about some numbers and the paradigm articulated here by Pew is very realistic. And the most realistic one I have seen since the Yas Queen onslaught blitzkrieg began. I'd say it's the soberest poll I have seen yet from a public pollster, and that's from Pew.
Well, since so much seems to be off the rails, is there a single? Yeah, that's wrong. That's not happening. That's the closest to happening that you're worried about.
This one, if Trump were to get into the low teens with whites, this one, Aaron.
General question, not about this particular poll or any of the ones that we just talked about. How much stock do you put into the notion that this is still an overall favorable environment for Donald Trump, given that the Real Clear Politics averages where they were in 2012? Obama was up by 3, 2016. Clinton at this point in August was up by 6, 2020. Biden was up by 7. The latest Real Clear Politics average has Trump up by 3, I think I saw. Maybe that's wrong, but it's still neck and neck at the worst. How much stock do you put into that notion?
Last cycle, the RCP average, and when you guys know, when we used to really break this stuff down, the RCP average was gospel to me. But last cycle, the RCP average presidential cycle in 2020 was the worst it ever performed. So that's why I'm looking more now at individual entities than just the average. Okay. But that's how I would answer that question. Okay. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. Thanks to our friends over at Real Estate Agents I Trust, and you want to make friends with them. If you are during these unprecedented times,
bing, 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 bing.
If you aren't going to that real estate market, man, Godspeed. Dare not venture forth without a trusty herald. We'll get you one of those at realestateagentsitrust.com, and that's where you'll find a real estate agent you can trust. That's why we called it that. A lot of times they come from right here in this audience, and they don't always come from this audience. A lot of times they do, but they always do come with a proven, vetted track record of success. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. All right, so whether you just need to get across town, whether you want to get and have to get across the country, if you want the end game you're looking for, your best odds are to go with realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. Aaron, you wanted to make a quick correction.
Yeah, just very quickly. So when I was talking about Real Clear Politics, their polling average, I was looking at battleground states. My overall point still stands, though. I was looking at battleground state averages going back to 2012, 2016, 2020, and now this year. And I pulled up the correct page. I mean, in the battleground states, Harris is leading by 1.5 points in that average. But still, one of these years is not like the others because whether it's Obama, whether it's Clinton, whether it's Biden, they were all up by much more at this juncture back then. But I just wanted to make that quick correction.
By the way, in 2020, just to show you, because it'd be easier for me just to go by the RCP average and save myself the time of dissecting all these individual polls. The problem with the RCP average is 13 of the 17 polls that RCP used to compile its average in 2020 were off outside their margins for error. 13 of the 17. 13 of the 17.
And most of those went which direction?
All of them that were off outside their margin for error, all of them were all wrong towards Biden. All of them. And what polls were those? I can just give you the names. I've got them right here in front of me. Okay. CNN, NPR, in the order of how bad they were. CNN, NPR, USC, Quinnipiac, CNBC, NBC, Wall Street Journal, YouGov, New York Times, Siena, Fox News, Harris, Survey USA, USA Today, and Reuters. All right, those 13 polls were off outside their margin for error of the 17 polls that RCP used to compile its average in 2020. Now, they've said after 2020, they've retooled it to tighten it up.
Okay.
And it might be good. I don't know. But again, I don't have a track record. Similar to the Scott Rasmussen himself, my guess is, given Scott's track record, he'll be very good and credible at this. But I don't have a previous cycle of RMG research to go back to, and I don't know that the new RCP average has, whatever they've done, will correct the errors that were done before. Now, here's what I can tell you about the RCP average, though. The battleground state polling was actually better for the most part. Okay? Arizona, within the margin for error. Florida had the wrong winner and was outside the margin for error. Georgia had the wrong winner, but was within the margin for error. Iowa was way outside the margin for error. Trump's margin in Iowa, way undersold. Michigan, within the margin for error. Nevada, nailed it. The RCP average on Nevada had Biden by 2.4. That's exactly what he won. Well, what he was certified, he won the state by. North Carolina, within the margin for error. Ohio, way undersampled Trump's margin of victory there. Pennsylvania, within the margin for error. Texas, undersampled, was outside the margin for error of Trump's win there. And then Wisconsin, terrible polling in Wisconsin again. This happens like every cycle. Their polling there is so bad. And that's what happens when you have, according to one of my little birdies, the worst voter rolls in America. That's what they're polling off of, the voter rolls. And they way overestimated Biden's win in Florida. The RCP average had him winning by 7 or 6.7. He won by 0.7. Much of that, by the way, is courtesy of the infamous ABC News Washington Post poll, which had Biden winning Wisconsin by double digits. You guys remember that poll? I had a conniption fit over that one day on the air during the election.
There's been so many conniption fits. Who can keep track?
Fair.
And rightly so.
That's fair.
I'm not.
Todd's like, that's an observation, not a judgment.
Yeah.
But fair. That's fair. Only one battleground state polling in 2020 overestimated Trump's support, and that was Georgia. That's the only one. The only one nailed it. That was Nevada. The other 9 all underestimated Trump's support by at least 3.5 points, which is outside their collective margin for error. And it's the second consecutive election that the polling of Ohio and Wisconsin way undersold Trump's margin of support there. So
let's move on to beating Dan Orlovsky like a drum.
What a segue. Now that we've killed everybody's interest in polls.
You know what, Todd? I think you might be onto something. That should just be, it'll make Steve's job a lot easier. Just not having to come up with really clever segues. Just make that our pat segue. Now on to beating the like a drum.
Yes.
That's just our go-to segue.
So for those of you that aren't, and it's not just into football, you got to really be into football. All right, because Dan was a backup quarterback in the NFL for about 8 years. Many of them with my Detroit Lions, where he once ran out of the back of the end zone losing track of where he was in Minnesota to give them a safety. I think that was the year that we didn't win a game. Okay.
And now he's the expert analyst.
He is now one of the top expert analysts on ESPN, but most of the time you see his analysis, during Mike Greenberg's show in the morning when a lot of you would be at work, So I don't know how familiar a lot of you are of him. But Dan Orlovsky made over $14 million as a backup quarterback in the NFL. Over $14 million. Over $14 million bucks. He doesn't need a job. He doesn't need an income. He's doing okay. He doesn't need this. Dan Orlovsky publicly identifies as a Christian on his Instagram page. Has several children, one of which is a daughter. According to Outkick, make sure we give them credit for this, Dan Orlovsky last week tweeted out, "Protect our daughters." And then says he removed the tweet because, quote, "it did not represent ESPN," unquote. Now, this information came on the heels of Samantha Ponder, who has been the network's lead pregame analyst. I mean, this is a coveted spot on the network, guys.
She took over for Chris
That's right.
Berman.
Chris Berman is basically the George Washington of ESPN.
Yes.
There's no other way to put it. Basically is the network's first ever star. The first talent they built their entire network around was Chris Berman. She took over for him. And her husband was a first round draft quarterback in the NFL. And she's not some hard righty, by the way. She's simped for George Floyd and everything else. But she's also said we should protect our daughters in sports. Now, last week, ESPN announced 2 layoffs. Contracts they said they couldn't afford. Only 2. Apparently these people were making so much money that these 2 layoffs absolutely made the math work. And they were both football people right as the season's supposed to start. Robert Griffin III, former Heisman winner, very likable. Also, though, if you want to get RG3 to simp for you, if you're like, what would get RG3 to say yes to my indecent proposal? Branded as woke. And I mean, RG3 will show you he'll do more than lift up his skirt. He'll perform.
He defended the male boxers beating on
Correct.
the women.
Just as an example.
Yeah.
Yes. So he got let go the same day Samantha Ponder did. Now, there was no talk that Ponder was on the hot seat. Again, they're just getting ready to start the season. So maybe Samantha Ponder was making so much money that along with RG3, those 2 budget cuts did enough to balance ESPN's debts. Or maybe they got rid of the gal who was one of the few that was out there saying what they're doing to women in sports is terrible. And then they just got rid of the multimillionaire Heisman winner who doesn't really need the job to kind of cover for themselves, to give them some cover for not just singling out Samantha Ponder. Totally possible. Either option, I don't know. I just think both options should be on the table. It's in the shadow of this. The reason I bring this up is because it adds some context to what Orlovsky has done here. It is in the shadow of this that Orlovsky then deleted that tweet. Essentially, what Dan Orlovsky has done is he has said, a guy that, again, made $14 million in the NFL. At least $14 million. At least $14 million. So he's a multi-millionaire. He does not need this job. I saw David Pollack, one of the great players in Georgia history, 3-time All-American. He got ran out of ESPN. Long-time analyst on their number 1 show, College Game Day. He got ran out of there for when they did do a bunch of budget cuts about a year ago. Okay, right before and so he wasn't on Game Day last year. And David is very outspoken about his faith, to his credit. All right, David's a good dude. And I saw him respond to what Orlovsky did and say, hey, when you work there at ESPN, you face this pressure all the time. With all due respect to David Pollack, man, who I am confident could end me if he wanted to. So I'm stating that up front, all right? But with all due respect to David Pollack, Dan Orlovsky this isn't his livelihood. Who the hell needs a livelihood when they're a multimillionaire? Or at least needs one that bad that it's worth betraying my own daughter for. So it's more important to Dan Orlovsky to be known as an obscure, analyst on ESPN a few times a week for 5 minutes at a time. And whatever comes with that, whatever recognition, whatever significance, I'm sure that I am sure he will put on his tombstone at the end, ESPN NFL analyst. That was worth throwing his own daughter under the bus, let alone mine and yours. It's heinous. It's despicable. It's also typical. It is a portrait of the state of maleness in America, because that's not a man. That's not. And hell, Dan Orlovsky played 9 years in the NFL. He could probably end me if he wanted to, too. But I got more balls and testosterone in my pinky finger than that dude does in every single one of his made up biceps. He's a wimp. And he should be scorned for what he's done. And the contrast, to have the freaking kicker, the position player everybody mocks and laughs at, he's the one with the balls, Harrison Butker, dropping Churchill quotes as he shows up to training camp. I'm not taking anything back. Bring it. This guy made $14 million to hold a clipboard in the NFL for 9 years. And being on ESPN for an hour a week means so much to him.
It does.
And it does. He's making that, he's confirming for you that it does. It means so much to him that his own daughter, let alone yours and mine, just sacrificed to the altar of the spirit of the age. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning about Tim Walz lying about how his kids were conceived. The fact that those in the grips of the spirit of the age are willing to use their children as props to betray them and lie about them more than we're willing to love and protect them is why we are losing. And we will continue to lose until that changes. Because Harrison Butker is the outlier. Dan Orlovsky is legion. Todd, I know you've got to have some thoughts about this here on a Pop Culture Tuesday.
If you want me to stop mocking Sports Bro, stop turning it up to 11 for me. All right? I'm just doing the math. Yeah. And the only difference between Dan and a lot of you guys who get frustrated with me is the fact that he makes all that money. But it's pretty darn clear when it comes to this, you approach things the same way. When I talk about this is where your emotional bandwidth is, the hill that you'll die on and the only one, and you'll do it while you're watching your kids being transed. This is how you live and approach your football fandom too. It's a guaranteed loser in so many different ways. They're aborting babies outside the DNC right now. And that stuff happens because you guys just can't be bothered. It's just the math. That's it.
This has been rattling around my increasingly empty cranium for the last almost 2 hours now. Hauntingly so. But it's the line that you dropped in the first segment of the show. Now I'm going to paraphrase it myself. If somebody like Tim Walz is more willing to use his children to attain power than you are to protect and defend your children and do what needs to be done to those ends, you deserve everything that's coming to you. Everything. Can't say it was without warrant. And this is I think a perfect illustration of that. This guy, Dan Orlovsky, basically what he did now is he rolled out to the right while he was in his own end zone and ran out of bounds for a safety. That's the same guy, right?
Yeah, which he did on the playing field. Yeah.
That's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed for yourself. I hope... This sounds mean-spirited. I hope that whatever circles of men that he runs in his personal life outside of ESPN, I hope they're looking at him with a side eye. Next men's meeting, next hangout, next church function. Like, what was that, man?
Yeah, if you're this dude's pastor, assuming he's at your church, do your job. Take that dude aside and say, what are you doing? Because that's a huge issue we have, too. Is how many pastors today... I mean, I would hope if I expressed that level of cowardice about my faith, or did something and said something demeaning about my family or something in public, I would hope Pastor Jesse would take me aside and say, what are you doing? What is that? How did that do anything at all to honor your testimony or the faith? What do you think? What do you think was going to come of that? But we don't have a lot of pastors that do stuff like that today, which is why we have a lot of the kind of behavior that you have from Dan Orlovsky. Because I don't think there's some peer group that is going to give him a side eye. I don't. I think most of his peers are going to say to him, hey, man, you got to do what you got to do.
Yep.
That's a great gig. There's a lot of people waiting in line to have it. We hear you.
Just too much money.
Just too much money. I mean, they'll replace you in 3 seconds. You're not needed. The thing is, he needs that job and whatever comes with it more than he needs his Lord. He's just shown that to you. He's worried about his values aligning with ESPN than aligning with the Lord's. Didn't the Lord say something about if you deny me, I'll deny you, something along those lines?
He said a lot of things that we ignore.
Yeah. Romans 8:28.